Allison, I'm here and I'm listening. I'm just shoveling down some food.
Okay, David, thank you. I just noticed your name up. I'm just waiting for a quorum. I just need one more person, I believe. I see also Councilor Andrew Kelly is here.
Laredo's here.
Oh, Councilor Laredo is here. Okay. Okay, well, we can start the meeting then because it is 7 o'clock. So good evening and welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Public Facilities Committee. My name is Allison Leary, Chair, City Councilor at Large from Ward 1. Joining me at the beginning of the meeting from the committee is Councilor Andrew Kelly at Large from Ward 3. Councilor David Kalis, Vice Chair at Large from Ward 8. Councilor Mark Laredo at Large from Ward 7. I see Councilor Deb Crossley at Large from Ward 5. Councilor Emily Norton, Ward Councilor at Ward 2. And that's everybody so far. And our committee clerk this evening is Cassidy Flynn. Cassidy, just let me know if another member of the committee joins or if other city councilors join. So
will do. I'm gonna let in Councilor Malachy now.
Okay. Okay, we're being joined by Councilor Julia Malachy, Ward Councilor from Ward 3. Not a member of the committee, but welcome to join. Our first item for discussion is an appointment. It's item 120-23. President Albright appointing David R. Gain of 83 Oakdale Road in Newton Center as a community representative of the Design Review Committee for the Countryside School Project. For a term set to expire upon the completion of the building project. Mr. Gain, are you here? I don't think Mr. Gain is here yet. Cassidy, do you have any information about Mr. Gain? Was he?
Yeah, he said he was available. I sent him the Zoom link on Friday, but I don't see him in the chat yet.
Why don't we come back to him if maybe he'll arrive later this evening?
Okay.
Okay. Otherwise, we'll just hold it and pick it up, schedule it for our next meeting. Okay. Our second item for discussion is 128-23. This is a request for a grant of location on Valentine Street, and this is also a public hearing, so I will be taking public comment. And I believe Ms. Mulroney is here to introduce this item.
Yes, good evening, Council.
Good evening.
National Grid respectfully requests your consent as part of the cast iron main replacement program to relay approximately 1,880 feet of 8-inch cast iron dating back from 1928 to 1913 and approximately 25 feet of 8-inch plastic dating back 2001 with approximately 1,905 feet of 8-inch plastic in Valentine Street from 85 Valentine Street to 240 Valentine Street. And they'll be relaying approximately 40 feet of 6-inch cast iron dating back to 1932 with approximately 40 feet of 6-inch plastic in the intersection of Howland Road and Valentine Street, and relaying approximately 40 feet of 6-inch cast iron dating back to 1934 with approximately 40 feet of 6-inch plastic in the intersection of Barnard Road and Valentine Street, and they're relaying approximately 40 feet of 6-inch cast iron dating back to 1924 and approximately 10 feet of 6-inch plastic dating back from 2001 with approximately 50 feet of 6-inch plastic in the intersection of Wanuit Road, and relaying approximately 80 feet of 6-inch cast iron main dating back to 1927 with approximately 80 feet of 8-inch plastic in the intersection of Bigelow Road and Valentine Street, relaying 420 feet of 6-inch cast iron dating back to 1928 and approximately 15 feet of 6-inch plastic dating back to 2011, with approximately 435 feet of 8-inch plastic in Ellis Road from Valentine Street to the existing 8-inch plastic at 38 Ellis Road, and relaying approximately 40 feet of 8-inch cast iron dating back to 1913 and 40 feet of 6-inch cast iron dating back to 1928, and relaying 80 feet of 8-inch plastic in the intersection of Valentine Street and Oak Cliff Road.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Mulroney. We had submitted a list of questions for this grant of location, and we only got a couple of them answered. One of them was, are the pipes leaking? And there were 4 small leaks, quite small. And actually I went over there with Mr. Nathan Phillips with the gas monitor CGI to check on them. And we didn't find the leak at, Oak Cliff Road. We found another small leak at another location. And we had asked if these pipes could be repaired and how that decision to replace versus repair would be made. We didn't get an answer.
I have the answers for that. And is Mr. Phillips, I don't know all the employees at National Grid. Is Mr. Phillips an employee at National Grid
No,
that was grading
he's
leaks?
not. He's a Boston University professor.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have the address of the new leak that you found? So did someone call it in?
I don't think anyone called it in yet.
Oh, geez, that's not good. You
But
always call in a gas
it's
leak.
a very small leak on
Doesn't
just
matter.
like the other 3.
Okay.
Just like the other 3. What I don't understand is why we're doing all this replacement here when we have so many much more serious and significant leaks all over the city. So I had a little concern about that. So if you do have answers to this question, to the questions then you're prepared
yes,
for them?
I do. So what question would you like addressed?
Well, how was the decision to replace all the pipes rather than repair them? And can you be specific about what kind of, how that decision was made?
Okay, I'll do my best. The existing cast iron main is very old, with the newest section being from 1934 and the oldest section being 1913. The project scope is to replace the main because spotted repairing the leaks does not eliminate the leaks, as any section of the pipe could leak due to the age and material. This represents a safety risk that can only be addressed through main replacement, and replacing the main eliminates all leaks of this segment on Valentine Street and eliminates future leaks. Lining for this 89 to 110-year-old pipe is not a viable option for the existing segments of main. And in addition, I'm not sure if anybody shared this with you, but the Newton Public Works Department is paving Valentine Street. So following the completion of the gas main replacement, they are going to pave the street in its entirety. If the paving is completed without prior main replacement work being done, there is the potential of emergency grade 1 leaks occurring, and continued repair activity on newly paved street would have a detrimental impact on the new asphalt. National Grid has a regulatory and safety obligation to replace small diameter aged cast iron main within the distribution system.
Okay. Well, that's what you just said is probably true for every single project across the city. I don't understand why lining would not be a viable option without further inspection of the main. But that's your answer. Okay. We wanted to know how many gas customers are connected to the pipeline that is being replaced.
There is approximately 46 customers that are within that segment on Valentine Street that we're replacing.
By the way, I am very aware that the city wants to pave Valentine Street.
Good.
where we make sure that we make every effort to coordinate pipe or any kind of infrastructure repair that involves tearing up the street, to coordinate that with any utility work. So we're aware of that. It just seems that this was being driven more for the need to repair the street rather than the 4 very small leaks that are at that section of road, which goes all the way from Commonwealth Avenue over to Washington Street at West Newton Square. Are there any new customers being hooked up?
No.
No expanded service?
No.
And okay, you said that we know there's no water intrusion there?
No, there's no water intrusion.
Okay. Have all the gate boxes been located and protected, and are they all operable and accessible? Because I did notice there was one that looked like it was in bad condition.
Okay. Could I have that as well as the leak address? Because
yes,
okay.
Can I give that to you? Can I email that to you after the meeting?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And also, yes, with the age of the existing main and infrastructure, the gas main replacement process would include all of the gate boxes being updated and replaced, because like you just said, you noticed one that probably is in poor condition. So this will be done in coordination with the Public Works Department and their paving plans to get in, and everybody will have a new gate box and it'll all be operable because it would be 2023 material.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to take questions from the committee, and then I will open it up for public comment. Councillor Kalis, followed by Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. There were 2 pipes that were from 2001 that you're replacing. Is there a reason for doing that?
It's just to keep it in the same loop rather than having a break. It would be like the distance of the footage for the pipe. So it's just to replace everything. So that's not disturbed, and we're hooking up to something that's been there for, 15, 20, whatever years.
Okay, so putting down plastic will last as long as it'll still, it's not a matter of wear and tear on those ones.
No, plastic is perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I just have a quick question about the scope of the project for now. And then I personally would like to hear from members of the public who are here before I talk some more. Part of this project is in my ward, though. That doesn't really matter to me because no matter where this was in Newton, I would care about it. Chair Leary, I think you just said this goes all the way from Comm Ave to Washington Street and West Newton Square. That's not the extent of it that I thought. I thought this began like up on the hill at Howland and then went all the way down to Comm Ave. You think it goes down the other side of the hill into West Newton Square?
Let me recheck the map. Let me recheck the map. Maybe I misspoke saying that Valentine Street goes, that far.
Yeah, Valentine Street ends at the fountain, which is at that,
Okay, that's where it ends, right?
I think a little short of that, but I just wanted us all to know. I don't think it's all the way from Comm Ave up over the hill and down into West Newton Square. But again, I'd like to reserve some other comments until after I hear from, I think, people here who have helpful perspectives to add. And I think this goes from my ward down into Ward 2, Emily Norton. So 2 of us, and this affects 2 of our wards. Okay. So I'll just stop for now, and I would like to be able to talk again later. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll open up the public hearing. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak? You can raise your virtual hand. Ms. Goldberg, please go ahead.
Okay, I did share my remarks, but I think I can, let me read them and comment on them. But I did want to jump to the point that there are grades of leaks that are assigned based on the dangerousness of them. And in the remarks, you'll hear that Newton has a problem with several emergency leak repairs required every week. And also in looking at the 2023 paving list on the Department of Public Works site, Valentine Street was not on the list of planned paving projects. And I also looked at their most recent street inspection survey. And again, Valentine Street was not one of the high priority streets that was scheduled for necessary improvement or paving. So I have lots of questions about that. But I'm so glad to have a chance to talk tonight, especially since we had that manhole incident, so that I think people now can clearly visualize the disruption and the damage and the losses that one explosion can cause. We don't know if, we can attribute it to the gas, but there was a unrepaired high volume gas leak near the site of the explosion. So we are very, very fortunate that no one was hurt. But we know it was not the first. If you remember the explosion by the Greek restaurant on Needham Street a few years ago, that was much more damaging and dangerous. And we know it won't be the last. The people, some of the members of our campaign for a future without gas and for clean heat are here tonight. And we are very grateful that you supported the resolution calling for a common sense citywide plan to replace National Grid's whack-a-mole crisis management approach. They justify every proposal for a grant of location as if that's going to be a safety measure, but it doesn't leave the rest of us very safe, considering we have so many leaks. So I hope you agree that we really deserve a working group to focus on trying to get National Grid to tell us how they're going to work with us to avoid and reduce the risk of another incident. And I really hope that we can really define the terms for that. Now, I did get the National Grid data for 2022, and it was very, very, I really broke my brain trying to work with the spreadsheet. So I sent you my statement with links, hoping that someone would check the figures. A couple of us got different amounts, but in general, we had 166 emergency repairs in 2022. That's about 3 or so a week. We have 143 unrepaired grade 2s, so-called non-hazardous, but these are leaks you need to keep an eye on because they could become hazardous. And they're supposed to be repaired within a year. Then we had 718 grade 3 leaks. And these were originally considered non-hazardous, but a few years ago, it was decided that the leaking methane was a significant environmental impact as we became more aware of the climate crisis, so that these are now designated grade 3 significant environmental impact when we measure them and find out that they are seriously leaking. And we have 83 unrepaired high volume leaks. And on that chart also, I pointed out that the oldest leak in Newton is at 52 Sewell Street, and that has been leaking since October 22nd, 1990. So I think we've mentioned many times that ratepayers are paying for the lost gas. So we're worried about the risk of explosion or fires. We're worried about the pollution indoors and out from leaking gas. We're worried about the cost of replacing pipes. And these are sunken costs as we work to transition to clean energy. These pipelines are going to be obsolete, but we're going to be paying for them into the next century. So I hope you agree that we not only have a right to know, but we also have a right to feel safe. So while we're advocating for a working group to work on this issue of transparency and accountability for the gas infrastructure, and to really find out which are the most dangerous leaks, and those should be the high priority for attention. And also, I'm really happy to say that we have a piece of legislation called Empowering Municipal Voices, H3137 by Representative Armini, and that reflects the language of the resolution and the working plan, the citywide plan that we proposed here in Newton. So I'm really excited that that may in fact remove the barriers to the authority that Newton now doesn't seem to have, but we're going to be working on passing that legislation sooner rather than later, I hope. But in the meantime, I'd like to ask National Grid to maybe consider these safety measures. I wonder if National Grid is using sensors to detect the heat and gas buildup, especially near the unrepaired high volume leaks. And I wonder if National Grid can plan to regularly test for the gas buildup in homes near these high volume leaks, because gas migrates in the soil and it can concentrate in basements and crawl spaces, even in homes when gas service isn't there, because that's what happened in Allentown, Pennsylvania in 2011.
I'm sorry, Ms. Goldberg, could I just ask you to wrap up a little bit?
Sure, okay, I'm almost at the end. Where an explosion killed 5 people, including 2 who had no gas service. And then I was hoping that we could agree to replace all the solid manhole covers with ones with venting covers to allow gas to escape and to reduce the chance that gas will build up and migrate through the soil, especially where there are high volume leaks that have been paved over. And I just wanted to point out the leak on Walnut Street was first identified in 2013, was identified as a high volume leak in July 2021, and then it was paved over in 2021. So I wondered if we can really count on DPW and National Grid to stop paving over high volume leaks. And I wanted to point out there are 30 gas main projects on DPW's weekly construction schedule. So we're not just talking about this one grant of location in terms of prioritizing our projects for safety. So I wondered if these are going to make Newton families safer or just create street degradation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goldberg. That's some very good information, and I appreciate your testimony. I see Ms. Sullivan, our Deputy Commissioner of DPW, is here. Please go ahead, Ms. Sullivan.
I'd love to answer on the paving for Valentine Street and also the gas valves. So last year we adopted drone flyovers for all of our paving projects, so we can identify anything that's paved over during.
Oh, drone flyovers, did you say? Use drones?
Yes, we're using drones to identify all gate valves, manholes, to ensure that they are no longer paved over.
Okay.
Valentine Street is in pretty poor condition. I don't know if anyone's driven it lately. There are several sections that are a mess. And if we continue to delay it, we're going to be required to do a full depth reclamation, which is a lot more expensive and a lot more disruptive to the residents of the street or anyone using that roadway. It was originally on our FY23 paving plan. However, National Grid informed us that they were doing work on it. So we are pushing it out to FY24.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sullivan. I have driven on Valentine Street, and it's not as bad as some, but it's not in great condition. Mr. Phillips, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to just make the overall point that I think that the priorities are not right here. Valentine Street is not a priority compared to the other urgent needs in the city of Newton. And there are other ways to deal with Valentine Street that are proven, and I can mention a little bit later. But I also want to just point out on the gas explosion that happened on Walnut Street, that there is still leaking gas there now, or at least yesterday when I went and tested for gas. So we found multiple places where the gas is still leaking on Walnut Street, including within about 100 feet of where the explosion occurred.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Did you call that in as a gas leak?
It's on your books.
Yeah, I know, but
reported to the Massachusetts DPW. I mean, the Massachusetts DPU, and
correct. But
so,
we
yes,
have to keep track of it.
Yes.
But it
Yes,
could go from a 3 to a 2 to a 2A to a 1. So you always have to call in a gas leak. Please
they
don't
were.
ever leave them there. Thank you.
Okay, in
Okay.
fact, if I could answer that question, I met a resident out where I measured gas in an Eversource utility cover yesterday, last night, at about less than 1% gas. And the resident was there and met me there, and I urged the resident to call National Grid, and they called National Grid. So I know that that call was made
Okay,
for the leak. As you
perfect.
know, there are multiple leaks on Walnut Street. And I would also like to make it known that the resident told me that National Grid was knocking on doors on Walnut Street Saturday night after the manhole explosion, the utility hole explosion occurred on, was it Thursday? On Saturday night, National Grid was knocking on people's doors unannounced to ask if they had gas odors in their basement and asking if they could investigate, which on the one hand is really great news that National Grid would do that, but it also recognizes that National Grid knows and did know that there's a concern that leaking gas mains might have had something to do with the explosion. The gas is still leaking there today. It was about 25% in the soil next to the sidewalk. That was not in a confined space. And that was in a hole that was clearly marked with spray paint by National Grid itself. So the National Grid knows about the leaks. They're on the Massachusetts DPU. So it's disingenuous to put on me, that, I should have called the leaks. And when you know that the leaks are there, you went knocking on doors.
That's
And it
not
is
our
still
policy.
leaking.
If someone calls in a
Okay.
leak and smells gas, they have to call it in every time.
Well, it was
Okay.
called in. It was called in.
Okay,
And
perfect.
I just, I would like to say that, the city of Newton itself has been putting out incomplete information that when there is an explosion does require a spark or an ignition source, and that very well could be an electrical spark. But a combustion explosion requires a fuel. It requires a gas to make the explosions heard and felt, as they were reported on the television news, where a resident said that they heard 2 explosions separated by about 30 seconds and their house shook. So these were combustion explosions, and there's leaking gas on Walnut Street today. The good news about all of this is that there are 2 old gas mains, cast iron. I'd love to know the year of them, on Walnut Street, a 12-inch cast iron main and a 16-inch cast iron main. And those are wonderful candidates for the lining procedure that was brought up. It's cheaper, it's trenchless, and it's proven to be durable. And just to finish up the comments, to go back to Valentine Street, a study that was performed by Cornell University in 2015 that looked at cast iron pipe down to diameters of 6-inch diameter found that lining was a durable solution for cast iron pipes that were aged to 100 years and were already over 50 years old. So that lining down to 6-inch cast iron pipe is a very durable and cost-effective patch to pipes. Those few leaks on Valentine Street don't even need that lining to be addressed in the short term. They can just be patched. So there's a much more cost-effective way to deal with the situation on Valentine Street. But the priority should be on Walnut Street, where it's still leaking and we had the gas explosion. Thank you.
I'm going to note the Walnut Street concern and bring it back to the supervisors and managers. But I'm going to say the Valentine Street is, it's a cast iron replacement program. It's mandated by the Department of Public Utilities. There's safety concerns. We're trying to do what Ms. Goldberg said. We can't go in and fix every street in Newton all at one time. And this one was requested because of paving for the city of Newton. So we're trying to work with the city and solve everybody's problems all at once. And I
If
do
I could-
appreciate all your help.
If I could just respond.
Mr. Phillips, I kind of want to get on to other people, if you don't mind. I mean, what what's telling us is that we really need a citywide comprehensive plan rather than having these discussions time after time with each grant of location, which is it's frustrating for me as well as for others who understand the serious problem the city has with whack-a-mole, with gas leaks all over. We're not making any progress whatsoever. We tear up the streets, inconvenience people. And yes, some gas mains do have to be replaced, but we don't have enough information to do a measured response and to address it and to figure out where they can be actually repaired or lined, as you said. The technology does exist. And as a matter of fact, in 2022, the legislature passed a law that did actually, it didn't require, unfortunately, but it suggested that utilities use best practices for best practices for leak repair rather than wholesale replacement. Just a reminder. I would like to go on to other members of the public. Ms. Calloway, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Councilor Leary. I'm a member of Mothers Out Front, and I'm sure all of you have heard of us at this point. We have been bringing the gas leaks to the attention of the public for years. This has been a big focus of us because we are very concerned, as you can see all the gas leaks in the maps that all of us have, how many there are in Newton. We're never going to get ahead of all of these leaks. We need to fix the high volume leaks first. That should be our priority. We have our priorities mixed up here. That should be our priority, fixing those high volume leaks that are leaking methane, waste, pollution into the atmosphere as we're all trying to move away from gas. This is like what we need to be doing. And I feel like each of these meetings, like you said, Councilor Leary, it's a whack-a-mole. We're doing the same stuff over and over. We need to have a working group that focuses on this, working with the city, working with National Grid to figure out the best plan going forward to fix the high volume leaks, get off of the gas, because we all know we have to get to clean energy. This is critical for all of us. So I want to emphasize that this is something that we've been looking at for years, and we need to move much more quickly. And I think we have to be much more, we need transparency, and this is critical for all of us as we move towards clean energy. So that's my comment. And these minor leaks on Valentine Street, I guess I don't really see that as being a priority when we have these major gas leaks in Newton and other areas. And fixing is the priority that we should have, just fixing and moving off of gas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Calloway. Ms. Melnick. Please go ahead, Ms. Melnick. I see you.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Mary Melnick. I live at 121 Valentine Street, the top of the hill here in Newton. And I have to say, in my 20 or so years of living here, the gas smell has become quite a bit more noticeable. But, you know, sad to say, I think we've gotten used to it. When I first moved in, I thought, wow, I think I smell gas. Had the gas company come, and they said there was nothing going on my property. Okay. About 2 weeks ago, my letter carrier waved me down. She was driving up the street. She pulled over. She came out and she said, I have to tell you, for the last few months, every time I come to drop mail in your neighborhood, the smell of gas is overwhelming. And I was taken aback because, quite honestly, I don't smell it. But she said, no, it's bad here. She said, I have a lot of different routes at times. Trust me, it's bad. So immediately, of course, I go in the house and I talk to my husband, and a day later I call National Grid. They came out immediately, and it was interesting because they only measured for gas leaks on my property. And they said there was nothing. And I mentioned what the letter carrier had said, and he sort of shrugged it off and said, yes, it's a big problem in Newton, but your your land is fine. It's pretty dispiriting to live in such a great city and pay great taxes to honestly feel like I've gotten so used to the smell, I don't even notice it, whereas other people do. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents out there and let people know that it's real and problematic.
Thank you, Ms. Melnick. It everywhere you go in Newton, you can smell gas, but you do get used to it. You get an out-of-towner who walks in here, they're shocked at how much gas there is all over the city. Thank you for your comments. Ms. Alperstein.
Yes, hi. I don't get used to it. I just have to say, when I walk around town and I smell it, my partners taking walks will attest to the fact that I get quite upset at yet another leak in a new location. So I'm speaking as an individual, but I'm also a member of AFWOG, the Future Without Gas group that has done such an important work to bring this to the attention of the City Council. And I'm also a board member of Green Newton and a member of the Newton Citizens Commission on Energy. I'm also an active member of Gas Transition Allies, which is in this session introduced 3 important bills focused on the responsible retirement of gas infrastructure and the transition to non-emitting and non-combusting energy sources. One of those bills, H3137, actually co-authored by Ellie Goldberg, focuses on increasing municipal authority to affect that transition by accessing important information. I'm lifting up the work of the many residents here, several of whom have spoken this evening, their determination and their deep concern about the timeline and the severity of our challenge, not only in terms of the dangers and the safety, but also the climate crisis, which we all know has turned the clock forward in really upsetting ways. So I want to thank Councillor Leary for your leadership, and I'm heartened to hear that you are moving forward with a gas leaks working group that will focus on a citywide plan to repair the gas leaks that are most important to repair, to retire the gas infrastructure in a responsible way, and to targeting opportunities to rewire for an electric and thermal energy heating and cooling system. After all, that is what our Newton Climate Action Plan calls for and what the Commonwealth is committed to do. It's not going to happen overnight, but if we don't really focus and prioritize now, we won't make it in the timeline that we've presented as necessary. So I was as a member of the public, I just want to mention that I was on the Zoom meeting today of the first meeting of the GSEP working group. Their goal is to present a report, and it's about reforming GSEP. And so this is in the offing, and I hope will make it easier for us to steer away from massive replacement of pipes toward selective and targeted repair and retirement. The first 2 presentations in the meeting today were about network geothermal projects that are pilots that Eversource and National Grid, lagging behind Eversource, are actually in the process of doing. But the problem here is that the 5-year plan of National Grid presented towards the end of last year calls for massive replacement of pipes to allow for hydrogen to be blended into methane gas, which they call natural renewable gas, for the foreseeable future. Billions of dollars to be spent on that replacement, and a strategy that isn't spoken about in public. We hear about safety, we hear about leak-prone pipes, but we don't hear about that plan, which they have presented publicly to the Department of Public Utilities, to increase and extend the life of the gas infrastructure. We need to be mindful of this.
Yes.
And as we plan today, we also need to really pay attention to what the decision-making process is at the DPU in concert with National Grid, and to design a way to have more authority. Granted, that authority has to come through the DPU in certain ways, but in the meantime, putting together a citywide plan is our responsibility and our government's responsibility if we really are serious both about the safety and the urgency of addressing the big leaks, but also about our planned future to be off of fossil fuels, specifically combusting fuels. So I'm excited. I'm willing to throw my shoulder to the work. And I hope that others in this meeting today will understand that the residents in Newton are here and determined and want this project to move forward. And that's why we show up at these meetings where the City Council Public Facilities Committee has their hands tied and uses this whack-a-mole approach when that plan needs to be designed and put in place. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alperstein. And I do want to say the City of Newton City Council did pass a resolution on the future of gas, which included a working group for a plan to transition off natural methane gas.
Which is great.
Thank you for your comments. I've not seen any other member of the public with their hand up. So I'm going to close the public hearing and go back to the City Council. Thank you very much. So Councillor Kalis, followed by Councillor Crossley.
Yeah, Chair, if I can ask a question of Ms. Mulroney, I'd like to.
Certainly.
So, Ms. Mulroney, I'd really like, I'd appreciate a response to what Ms. Melnick had to talk about, and that specifically on Valentine Street, and to understand, is it the policy of National Grid for somebody to come out and, although there is gas all over the street, go on one property and simply with blinders kind of ignore the larger problem and say that there is no problem on one property? It just seems ludicrous to me.
I did listen to what Ms. Melnick said about 121 Valentine Street. That's in my notes, and there will be a follow-up to that. So National Grid, again, is governed by the DPU, and we have a protocol of doing a gas check in the footage, the mains, the services, even to homes that don't have gas. They can be in the scope of, on their property, at their foundation, checking for a gas leak, because gas can travel on the water, can travel on conduit, it can go anywhere. So I did note that, and I am going to follow up with that. So
what kind of report is written by the person that goes out from National Grid? And where does it go? Does it just go nowhere? Because it seems like that's what happens. And is there no way that we can influence that, or are you just governed by the DPU? So we really can't do anything about how, when National Grid reps come out, if they're really putting the blinders on, that's just what they do, and there's nothing we can do, really?
I don't believe that is the case. That's why I'm going to ask about what the process was for this particular house address.
Ms. Mulroney, would you be able to get back to us with that information?
I'll have someone get back to you with it. Yes, but but the leak is, when did 2 weeks ago she had that call in, right? That's what she said.
Ms. Melnick, was it 2 weeks ago? You're on mute.
Hold on.
You're back on mute.
So sorry about that. It was about 2 weeks ago now, maybe, 2.5. And I sort of teased the guy when he said, "Oh, your house is fine. The property's fine. There's nothing, you didn't see anything." And I watched him walk around the perimeter of our land, of the house. And it was, and I sort of joked with him and I said, "Well, what about out in the street, or anything else going on?" And he said, "Well, we're just looking at your property right now. Yeah, the house right now." So, I didn't push him on it.
Thank you,
Okay,
Ms.
this,
Melnick.
this was prompted by a call by you. Is that correct? Or
That is correct, because
Okay.
my letter carrier, once again, had flagged me down on the street and stopped her car. She was just driving by, but she does our route all the time. And she basically said, you know, she's been a letter carrier for, 35 years, and she finds the smell of gas up on the hill incredibly noticeable. And she just wanted to make me, aware of that.
So thank you, Ms. Melnick. And just one more follow-up, Ms. Chair Leary. So Ms. Mulroney, the fact that somebody would come out when we're talking about gas leaks, where we've had explosions, and it's a danger in our community, in our society, is reprehensible. They have got to be more comprehensive when they come out and when they write the reports. And I want to understand how if we can actually influence their behavior when they come out to these houses.
they're trained, they go to school to find out, what they do when they get to a leak, whether they do so much footage, whether they check the main, they have to check the house, if there's sewer manhole covers, there's a whole list of things that goes into the training for the techs. And that,
Can
like
we
I said,
add
we're-
when they are visiting in Newton that they walk the street and report on it?
I'm going to follow up with this, yes, because, yes.
Let's
Thank you.
follow up, Councillor Kalis, with that. So we do have a fairly heavy agenda this evening. I'm going to go on to Councillor Crossley, followed by Councillor Laredo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for being here again. I expect we're going to see you all again and again. And I don't mind that. I'm happy to spend this long period of time on every single grant of location until we can come up with a reasonable solution. Although our hands are tied as a city council in terms of how we are able to or should be voting on any particular grant of location, I think what I want to say is, why can't we do both? The city is asked, and we as a city councilors and the mayor's office, we're asked to walk and chew gum all the time. So, number one, we want to prioritize high volume leaks. I've been hearing that myself since I was chair of public facilities, and for many years while serving on public facilities and going to the Gas Leaks Alliance meetings and so forth. And the only opportunity we had at the time to understand where all the high volume leaks were in the city of Newton was because of the volunteer efforts of HEAT and others. Because National Grid would come to those meetings but not engage. We want to prioritize high volume leaks. That's what caused, it's because we had a buildup of gas in the main, as Nathan Phillips said. Yeah, there were frayed wires. We have old electrical under our streets too. But the only way a spark can ignite, as he so clearly said, is if the buildup of gas underground is so intense that it will cause that explosion. I'm surprised we haven't had more, honestly, given the condition we see is underground. We want to prioritize high volume leaks. So that's number one. But I happen to think we have a fabulous leadership team in our DPW. Ms. Sullivan and Jim McGonigal, I think, are doing yeoman's work. And this is the walk and chewing gum. We also have problems with our streets. It's not really fair to say that we should, or because as a city, we have control over our streets. What we've worked so hard, what they have worked so hard doing over the last 7, 8 years, is to work with National Grid on a regular basis to coordinate the work underground. And I don't particularly want to slow that down. It already, you know, for many, maybe thousands of citizens, it's already going too slowly. And it would be really dumb to pave over the streets, knowing we have gas leaks in the ground and not repairing them. We say this over and over when we have grants of location or when we do a big project. It would be really dumb to pave over bad work and have to dig it up again. So, but the issue of relining versus replacement, I want to get away from patching, because I understand that if you patch a leak in one place, 12 feet away, you're going to get another leak, or 12 feet away from that one, you're going to get another leak. I watch it happening on Route 9. I've been watching it for a dozen years. So I don't want to talk about patching steel and cast iron pipes, but relining. Ms. Mulroney, what you said didn't give us an answer. So you said it didn't make sense. I forget your words exactly, but they told you that it didn't make sense to reline Valentine Street, but there was no reason. I don't understand why that couldn't be a reasonable approach. And I would like to understand, because there might be conditions that make it reasonable and conditions that make it unreasonable. But I also understand that it's the GSEP that is controlling this big picture right now. We don't control it. If Ms. Mulroney, if you can come back to us, if you get some answers from the people at National Grid to help define when a relining makes sense, you know, unless it's prohibited somewhere by GSEP, I'd like to understand that. I understand we can't vote against this particular grant of location. That's because this isn't something we have control over, but it doesn't make sense to do a total replacement. 3, retire the gas infrastructure. Most of us on this, maybe all of us, understand that ultimately that is what we want to do substantially, that we don't want any primary systems to be fueled by gas anymore. This is a much longer term effort. I think we don't even fully understand how we can do that, which I've read is the biggest barrier to doing that, is that it's not clear. And I understand, Mr. Phillips, Professor Phillips, there's an idea about how to do it, but in terms of practically how to do it, how to manage it, how to sequence it, there's not a strategic plan yet for actually doing it. And we're in this very difficult transition period. But bottom line, what I want to understand is, why can't we prioritize the high volume leaks and coordinate the gas work that needs to be done so that our streets can be paved? We happen to have a really good paving program, an aggressive repaving program in the city of Newton that's quite comprehensive. So why can't we do both? And I don't expect you to answer that question, but it doesn't make sense to me that we can't do both if we can work with National Grid on both fronts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cross. I think we can do both, and it would be part of a comprehensive citywide plan. That's how I'm looking at it. Councilor Laredo, thank you for being patient.
So I'll be brief. I mean, these are all important objections. I think Councilor Leary, you identified trying to put together a working group. Mr. Yo is on the call, I think. I saw him. I know we have Ms. Sullivan here as well. I suggest you do that offline and try to convene the appropriate working group and bring in people from National Grid at a sufficient global level of authority so that they can actually implement change. I think we're in many ways being very unfair to Ms. Mulroney, who comes here diligently on behalf of her employer, makes presentations to us and does a good job of that. But I don't think she's got the type of authority within the entity, at least I don't think so, that we're looking for. And so that's my strong suggestion, rather than have us now engage once again, because we've done this multiple times now, in the exact same discussion. And I think that would be a far more productive use of our collective time and frankly, more likely to get some concrete results. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rado. We're having our first meeting on the working group with President Albright Friday.
Excellent.
And I would invite any member of Public Facilities who would like to participate in that would be welcome. And I'll have more to say about that. I have been following all the GSEP meetings as well as the Gas Allies meetings. And I just want to reiterate that we do have there were amendments made in 2022 on the Driving Clean Energy and Offshore Wind Bill that require gas distribution companies to consider including the use of advanced leak repair technologies to repair any existing leak-prone gas pipe to extend its useful life and replace gas infrastructure with non-emitting renewable thermal energy, such as geothermal. And so NGRID is well aware of that. And so that's where we're moving towards. It's unfortunate that we're having these grant of location longer discussions, but there's a lot of concern and interest from members of the public as well as members of the city council when we keep seeing this over and over again. And we have this tool. We're looking to extend our toolbox into other sources so we can take this back into a working group where it belongs. Councilor Kelly, I see you have your hand up.
I do. I just wanted to circle back to it. I think it would be helpful for us and for the members of the public, for you, Madam Chair, to explain to us what we are authorized to do tonight. As Councilor Laredo said, we have this conversation all the time. It's getting very frustrating. I'm glad there's movement ahead for a working group. I would love to know more about being able to attend that meeting on Friday. So perhaps, Chair Leary, you can just remind us in an email or something how to participate in that. And can you, I find it very frustrating to think that we have to vote for this, despite how we feel about it, if in fact there are other alternatives to consider. Priority other locations, the paving process, lining versus replacing. So can you just outline for us sort of like the legality or charge of what we can and cannot do with this item before us tonight?
We can approve it as is. We could hold it and wait for the additional information that was requested from Ms. Mulroney during this meeting, or we can approve it.
Okay.
So that's what's before us this evening.
Well, I'll just say while I still have the floor that I would be in favor of holding it to get more information from Ms. Mulroney. I would not myself vote in favor of this tonight, given the questions and concerns we still have. And if you want a motion for that from me, unless someone else would like to make a motion as the Ward 3 councilor, I would be happy to move. You've already closed the public hearing, but I would be happy to move to hold this item.
Oh, thank you, Councilor Kelly. Councilor Crossley, I saw you had your hand up still, and then I'll go to Councilor Laredo.
I do want to just mention, we got an email, some of us got an email from Andrew Lee today on this subject. And I think it would bear restating his message, which essentially he says, I have to reiterate that the city does not have the legal authority to refuse a grant of location because the utility company will not provide information that is beyond the purview of the city's limited grant of location authority. So that relates to some of the kinds of questions we're asking. When we're asking for a citywide strategic plan, you know, I'm a big fan of strategic plans. I'm a big fan of looking at a problem comprehensively, but that's not within our authority. We can push and do it and get the working group going, and it's all good, but we can't deny this petition based on not having that information.
Well, we've done it before, Councilor Crossley.
Sorry?
We've held grants of location.
No, you
based
can go ahead
on.
And, yeah, I'm just saying what he said. We certainly we can hold it and hope to get a little bit more information.
Yeah. A hold is not a denial.
It's not a denial. I just wanted to bring that to the floor so that people can understand exactly where our authority begins and ends.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Crossley. Councilor Laredo.
So I want to just ask Ms. Sullivan, when's the paving work going to be done and do we have any issues with delay here?
It should be fine as long, we're hoping to do it either in the spring of 24 or by early fall of 24.
All right, so we're not, I want to be very careful. We're not delaying anything for the residents of Valentine Street or the people who use that road, right?
As long as you don't hold it too long, they need to get the work done and we need time for the trenches to settle before we pave.
So as long as we delay, say no more than a month or so, we're okay?
Should be fine.
All right.
Can I interject here for a second? That is provided National Grid is available to go in and do the gas main, that they haven't gone to another town to do the gas main work. That and I just want to add, can you, for the delay or the hold, can you please go over the questions that's holding this for me, just so I have them here and I have the correct information? I see the concern that Mr. Nathan has on Walnut Street, which I'm going to put that up. And then the customer on Valentine Street, that's another issue. But I'm trying to wrap my head around, like, this is public safety concern for National Grid. That's why we do cast iron replacement main in conjunction with the request from the city of Newton. We're trying to work as a team. We're trying to eliminate the gas leaks. I know that you think on this street there's only 4 and another street might have 7, but we're trying to work together here. And you know, so I know that you're coming up with a chair, Councilor Leary, like a team group, but that shouldn't prohibit this grant from going forward.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mulroney. The other question, I believe, was Councilor Kalis's questions regarding how the NGRID employees handled the
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's part of the whole, yeah,
Okay.
121 Valentine Street in Newton. I'm concerned.
We can,
about that.
I can
The
go.
other question, there's one more question, which is the rationale for saying that in this particular case, it didn't make sense to reline. What is the reason?
National Grid doesn't reline. They're very limited to I mean, I've worked for them for 43 years. It's very, it's not something that is in their process now. Maybe that'll change where the laws change, but right now that's not something they do.
It's just a policy. There's not a technical reason why you won't reline.
I can't answer that because I don't know that.
Okay.
But I know that I have not seen that.
So there's a policy that says they will not reline, they will only replace.
All I know is they've only replaced. I have not witnessed them relining. So I don't know if a policy exists. If it doesn't, I can't answer.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Mulroney. I'm going to go to Councilor Laredo and Ms. Goldberg. The public hearing has closed.
I don't think you entertained a motion to close the public hearing, Chair Larry, but I'll be happy to make one. I also am fine if Councilor Kelly wants to hold this item. Respectfully, I'd suggest between now and say Friday that as chair, you provide Ms. Mulroney an exact list, you know, based on the tape and so forth of tonight of what the questions are, that we give Ms. Mulroney a week.
Of course, I already am going to do that, Councilor Laredo.
We give Ms. Mulroney a week or so to get back to us, and we put this on for 2 weeks or so. So we get our answers. We don't delay the project unnecessarily, but we get satisfactory answers. And I'd like to see us do that expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you. I did close the public hearing, but I make a motion to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay. Counselor Crossley, is your hand still up?
Nope, sorry.
Okay, so there's a motion to hold. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Mulroney, for taking the time to be with us this evening.
Yes, thank you. And I thank you all for respecting the product. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I will be in touch with you, okay, before the end of the week. We're gonna go back to the first item, okay? This is 1/20/23. President Albright appointing David Gain of 83 Oakdale Road as a community rep for the Design Review Committee for the Countryside School Project. Mr. Gain, are you with us?
Let me go off mute. Can you hear me well?
Yes. Hi, Mr. Gain. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We're just asking you to introduce yourself and express some of your interest in being on the Design Review Committee for the Countryside School. And we all got your information and your very impressive resume. So thank you for being here.
Oh, but thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself in front of the committee today. So as my application provide, my name is David Gain. I live in 83 Oakdale Road in Newton. My daughter Noemi is now in Brown Middle School. She spent 6 years at Countryside. Lucille is in 4th grade in Countryside, and my son Alexandre is in kindergarten in Newton South, and will join Countryside in September 2024. So I'm very grateful about the appointments on the Design Review Committee. I'm honored and excited to have the opportunity to contribute in the developments and the improvements of the school. I'm very enthusiastic. I'm committed to work with the committee of the school. I hope that the project will align with all the preferences of the community, and I hope this project is going to be innovative and sustainable and inclusive, all are values that are very close to my heart. I'm looking forward collaborating with the committee members and stakeholders, create space that will inspire our kids, creativity, learning, growth, all of it. So thank you again for entrusting me, and I'm eager to use my skills and experience for the city of Newton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gain. Are there any questions from members of the committee? I'm not seeing any questions. Councilor Kalis.
This isn't really for David, although Mr. Gain, I'm very happy that you're stepping forward on this, and I think that your background is interesting, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, other counselors, it's a little bit different than I would expect for this role, but it actually brings a different kind of lens, more technology focused, more inspirational, I think. So I think that could be a good thing. My question is really, and Chair, I'm not sure who to ask this to. Maybe it is actually to Mr. Morris, but who else is on the committee, and what are their backgrounds, and how does Mr. Gain's background complement the people on there?
Great question, Councilor Kalis. So just a quick reminder for Section 558 of the City of Newton ordinances. We are required to have 2 community reps to represent the neighborhood for the site plan review 558 process. So David is volunteering. Thank you very much, David, to be one of those representatives. We don't typically look for necessarily design professionals to join the Design Review Committee. It's more about people who have a vested interest in the neighborhood, in the project at hand, in this case, the Countryside School. It happens to be great that David has the background he does, because I agree, I think it complements the design team that we do have. And to answer your direct question, we have a host of professionals on our Design Review Committee now, architects and engineers and people in the construction world, and civil, site, landscape, you name it, everything under the sun. So we have a very, very good broad spectrum represented there.
Great, thank you. Then at the appropriate time, Councilor Leary, I'd move approval of Mr.
Thank you,
Gain.
Councilor Kalis. Okay, Councilor Crossley.
Well, I just want to thank, where did he go? I can't find him.
Still there.
Okay, I really just want to thank you for stepping up, Mr. Gain, and this was my school when my kids were young enough to go to Countryside, so I've been attending a number of the meetings as well. And thank you, Commissioner Morris, for answering the question, because we do expect that the long-term members of the Design Review Committee have a mix of expertise that they can lend to the voluminous work that they do. But in every case, when there's a school, that we ask for a community representative to basically share the interests of the school community and the neighborhood community. So thank you. And I'll go with Councilor Kalis's motion.
Thank you, Councilor Crossley. So we have a motion to approve Mr. Gain. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay. Mr. Gain, thank you for your service. You're much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Okay, have a
Appreciate
good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. So our next item, and I know this is what the committee's been waiting for all year long, is 119-23 is our discussion on sustainable materials management. And this will, Juanita Trabert, our director of that department, will give us an overview. Ms. Trabert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Allow me to share my screen. And get into presentation mode. Does that look okay?
Yep. There it is. Yep. And now it's in presentation mode.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me tonight to provide an update on what my division has been up to. We are a busy division of DPW and have experienced a lot of growth, as you will see. So I wanted to review what this division is responsible for. So we oversee curbside collection services for trash and recycling, administering the waste management contract, providing residential and fee-based nonprofit service. We also provide yard waste collection now using DPW staff. More on that in a minute. Dumpster collection services are provided to municipal buildings and some residential properties included in our waste management contract. And we run the Resource Recovery Center located at 115 Rumford Avenue. And we also now have the street sweeping operation held within our division. So staffing has increased quite a bit by taking on the yard waste operation and having the street sweeping operation moved from the streets division into the sustainable materials management division. This year, we added a superintendent position, and the assistant superintendent position was moved from streets with the street sweeping operation last year. There is a full-time waste diversion coordinator who is responsible for education and enforcement, and there is a part-time administrative assistant newly filled this week. The street sweeping crew consists of 7 people. The yard waste team is 6 people, and those were all 6 new positions created last year. And at the Resource Recovery Center, we have 3 full-time staff. And then there is a position that is titled handyman, but it's really kind of a jack of all trades. He does a lot of going out and investigating complaints of illegal dumping, picking up illegal dumping. He picks up dead animals. There's just kind of like a wide range of tasks that he does. So under our residential curbside collection services umbrella, I like to just kind of give context. Everyone knows what services they have, but I just like to put it all in one big package. So there's the weekly trash service with overflow bags. There's weekly single stream recycling service and yard waste collection 38 weeks per year. There are additional services available upon request with an associated fee. Bulky item pickups at $20 per item. There's appliances, electronics, and scrap metal items. Essentially, bulky recyclable items is really what that categorizes for $25 per item. And most of those items can also be dropped off at the Resource Recovery Center at no cost. And then mattress and box spring recycling for $60 per item curbside. There's also the organic subscription preferred vendor program. At the Resource Recovery Center, we have a variety of drop-off collection services available. This is a staffed recycling drop-off center open 5 to 6 days per week. The summer hours allow for 5 days that we're open. We collect over 25 material streams. We have 18 household hazardous waste events annually, 2 secure document shredding and drug take-back events. And we're adding or trying to add in more latex paint recycling events. We held a successful one in fall of 21, but did not hold any last year. And we have one planned for next weekend on Earth Day. Our most recently added services at the Resource Recovery Center are year-round yard waste drop-off and mattress recycling, where we accept mattresses or box springs for $35 a piece. So where is Away? Where do we send what we are collecting to go and what happens to it? So solid waste or just trash, household trash, goes to the Wheelabrator Millbury Waste to Energy Facility. Last year, calendar year, we sent almost 17,000 tons of trash from our residential stream. Single stream recycling is processed, which is really sorted and commoditized. So put into just paper, just cardboard, just glass, etc. At the Waste Management Avon Materials Recovery Facility. And last year it was about 8,600 tons. Yard waste is collected at the curb by DPW staff and brought to the Resource Recovery Center. It's then picked up by a separate hauler that is contracted and taken to a commercial composting site that is permitted by Mass DEP. And there's various sites that our vendor takes that material to based on availability. All the other materials that we collect have independent individual vendors that we work with. And they have a variety of places that they go to be recycled or be responsibly managed. In 2022, Mass DEP completed a waste characterization study of all waste to energy facilities within the state. This is something that is written into, I believe, legislation that all waste energy facilities must have a characterization study done every 3 years to maintain their renewable energy credits. I believe that's kind of the tie there, or at least the incentive to make it happen. So this image is the aggregation of materials that were characterized from the from the Wheelabrator facility in Millbury, which is where Newton's trash goes. As you can see, the largest segment of the waste stream is organics, 33%. And that's not to say that every single thing that falls into that category could have been composted, but I would say a very significant chunk of that could have been diverted. And that also goes for the recyclable materials that are listed under paper, plastic, metal, and glass. Those majority of those streams also could have been diverted through existing infrastructure and collection programs. I did some quick math and found that what Newton sends to Millbury is 3.5% of the total annual waste managed by that facility. So just to try to give you some perspective of how large that facility is and how much volume they're handling. So I want to refresh everyone that there is dwindling disposal capacity in Massachusetts. So there's a solid waste master plan that is developed by Mass DEP. It's done every 10 years. From 2010 to 2020, the goal was to reduce trash disposal by 30%, and in actuality, it was reduced by 16%. For 2020 to 2030, the goal is again to reduce trash disposal by 30% and also reduce trash by 90% by 2050 in that plan. Those goals have not been adopted by Newton, but I just like to give a frame of reference for kind of what the state is encouraging municipalities to work toward. In 2019, Mass DEP did a waste capacity study, and it had several, I would say, firm conclusions that there is limited and decreasing solid waste disposal capacity in the state, that municipal solid waste combustion capacity is being fully utilized currently. And as these facilities age, or they're very likely to experience increased downtime and maintenance. And that landfill capacity for municipal solid waste and construction and demolition debris is projected to decline to virtually zero by 2027. This is potentially going to be extended because there is a application for the Bourne landfill to expand, but that hasn't been approved yet. So that might change that number, but I would say realistically, we are looking at it's known within the space that I work in as the capacity crisis in Massachusetts, and more trash is being exported to other states because there is dwindling capacity and contracts available for these types of facilities. So the types of impacts that we are seeing now, occasionally, it's not that it happens every day, but we do see long lines and wait times happening at these disposal facilities. So basically the system is so overloaded that if one incinerator goes down, it leads to a lot of waste haulers needing to go to other facilities. And since they're already maxed, it leads to basically a traffic jam. It takes a half hour for some of these large trucks, like the 100-yard capacity trucks, to unload. And so it can just take a long time for each truck to get in, unload, and get out. So what that does is it causes drivers that holds commercial driver's licenses to reach their capacity of hours that are limited by federal regulations with the Department of Transportation. So as they reach their hours for the week, because they're waiting in line for upwards of 3 hours, it's possible that by Friday, they don't have enough hours to get the routes finished. And so this is not something that's on the hauler. We hold the contract with the disposal site, and it has happened already that our hauler, Waste Management, has come to us and said, well, we put additional people on Friday because our regular drivers had reached their hours. So really that should be an added cost that we charge you. And so it has gotten to the point where we would evaluate our contract and look at what that would actually look like, but it has never come to the point where we've been charged extra yet. I would say that this is likely to be a factor in our next hauling contract that would increase costs. So our current disposal contract with Wheelabrator in Millbury is a 20-year contract, and it ends June 30th of 2028. Because of this landscape, the longest contract terms that disposal sites are now making with municipalities or even other clients is 5 years. Municipalities that have recently signed contracts with disposal sites are seeing increases of 40% or more. So I just want to kind of emphasize that that's something that we can be expecting. This is not a situation that is going to get better with time. Now an update on the recycling markets. So I want to start by saying and emphasizing that mainstream stories that describe recycling as broken or state that plastics recycling is a hoax are grossly exaggerated. And while I'm not trying to say that there aren't flaws with plastics, I can say that recycling is not the enemy of consumerism. It's actually helpful. So I want to say that the system is flawed, but it is functioning. It's not going to get us to zero waste. It's not the silver bullet, but it is much, much better than disposing of materials that could have been recycled. So commodity values fluctuate, municipal budgets don't. So the city has had to budget conservatively to plan for the worst. And then in some cases, we have seen our commodity pricing, which it changes every month based on a formula that's in our contract. We have seen sometimes that the value of our recyclables is higher than what we anticipated, and so we pay less. So there's basically this volatility in the market and kind of variability in price. We know and we've heard that there was a lot of supply and demand shift caused by the China import ban in 2018. And then the pandemic didn't help as far as like curbing volatility. But what was very interesting was that domestic demand has increased significantly. If you think about in 2018, when China closed its doors, didn't want to purchase 40% of the world's recycling, not just from the US, but also from Europe, Australia, Japan. It took a couple of years for facilities to get permitted and built here in the United States, but those are now up and running. There's also been virgin paper mills, paper pulping mills that had been shuttered that have now become paper recycling facilities. Interestingly, purchased by China. So I want to talk about what we are currently paying for recycling and highlight that last year, in fiscal year 22, so I just did a comparison from July through March because that's what I have for our current fiscal year. Last year at this time, we were receiving an overall rebate for those 9 months of $42,000. So it points to the fact that for the tail end of the pandemic, it had really helped kind of the some of the disruptions to the supply chain had really helped recycling. It had disrupted virgin material markets, and therefore there was a higher demand for recycled material markets. This year, the possibility of a recession has really caused a price drop and has shifted a lot of purchasing decisions and things like that. So we are back to paying $458,000 just to show you and demonstrate like the swing. But I also want to highlight and draw attention to, certainly that's a big cost, but compared to what we pay for trash in both FY22 and FY23, by this time of the year, we are paying nearly $1 million to handle our trash. So I still point everyone to recycle as much as possible. Of course, recycling only the right things. And also, it's a coincidence that it's $947,000 each of those years. We actually have a trash volume that is down this year, but our price is about $5 higher this year than last year because of inflation. So this is a graph that I've been charting for a number of years. I like to say that, and point out that Newton reached peak trash in FY04 and has been in a steady decline since. Interestingly, we were already declining in trash generation when the CART program was implemented. We saw a decrease in FY16 that I would say is fairly unexplained and kind of a leveling out since. Recycling tonnage all along seems stagnant, but I would make the argument that it's very likely we're seeing a higher volume of recycling, but overall, both for trash and recycling, there's a well-documented effect of lightweighting of materials. Basically, we all used to get newspapers. We used to have a lot more heavy packaging, a lot more heavy materials. It's that comparison of a water bottle that used to weigh 20 grams and now only weighs 8 grams. So over time, there's been this dematerialization that's been happening, even though we're all ending up with a lot of stuff that we toss out, either in the trash or the recycling. All of that material weighs less than it used to. So that helps to explain some of this decline, because we just measure everything by weight in this industry. So talking about our yard waste operation that we've taken in-house. So we created 6 new union positions last year. We have rented 4 rear load packer trucks. We successfully provided better service in 2022 than the contractor that we previously had. It was previously included in our waste management contract, but there was some very significant disruptions in the service, primarily due to the pandemic, but certainly other factors. And we're aiming to further improve that service this year. I would say we're already off to a great start. There is also potential for cost savings by taking this operation in-house. We don't have a full analysis yet of or completed for last year, but certainly we're going to have that comparison soon for this year and what it looked like last year. And I definitely expect it to be a more cost-effective operation this year. So looking at yard waste volumes, it was interesting during the pandemic. There was actually this really serious increase of yard waste that was probably one of the most unexpected consequences of so many folks being at home for such an extended period of time. We've seen those volumes come down, but we're still at a 13% increase for calendar year 22 over the pre-pandemic year of 2019. In FY21, the significant increase of yard waste actually caused a budget shortfall. So we've since adjusted the budget and anticipate receiving a lot more yard waste generated, but it's just been kind of interesting to see what that impact has been. So street sweeping, again, is now included in our division, and I think there's a lot of great tie-ins. We do manage the sweeping material. It gets dumped at the Resource Recovery Center, and so we also pay attention hauling that out and count those weights that we collect as well. Overall, the street sweeping operation is a fair weather year-round sweeping program. Most of the town squares, village squares, are swept daily, and bike lanes are swept twice a week. We're working on equipment and technology advances, including sensors on brooms to track road miles swept. There's a vacuum sweeper that was purchased a couple of years ago that is deployed weekly to sensitive watershed areas to get finer materials. And we're looking at purchasing a regenerative air vacuum sweeper, but it doesn't look like that's going to be feasible in this upcoming fiscal year. So it would be looking already to fiscal year 25 for that. The MS4 permit requirements are informing our operations decisions, which is why we want, or kind of on our wish list, is the regenerative air vacuum sweeper, because it does get more material and offer more credit for that permit. We're working to optimize routing in 2023 using that technology that we've put in place. And there was a street sweeping parking ban area established in Nonantum last year that was piloted for 6 months. It's about 7 streets. It was a resident-led initiative, and they wanted to have more complete sweeping of the street. So we piloted banning parking for 4 hours per month. 1 day a month for 4 hours, you can't park there, so that we can sweep the street. And it has been enforced, and it was made permanent in February. Looking at our organics collection options, we have the curbside subscription preferred vendor program with Black Earth Compost. As of today, we had 2,849 participating households, which is 9% of the total households in Newton. Overall, this program has diverted almost 1,700 tons of food waste since Black Earth first started operating in about fall of 2019 is when I think they started servicing Newton. We also have a drop-off collection option for residents, so it's no cost. Right now, it's only available at the Resource Recovery Center at Rumford. We have 2 carts that are picked up 3 times per week. We haven't had any issues with odors or pests at any point in time. Even though they're not locked carts, it hasn't been a problem. We're picking up about 1 ton per month from that program. And we have plans to expand the organics drop-off program to allow 24-hour access and more geographically distributed locations. We are going to use Big Belly containers to collect that material. And the finalization of the locations is in process, and we hope to get that off the ground this summer. It's looking like July. So last year, Mass DEP put in place 3 new waste bans. 2 of those waste bans impacted our operations for textiles and mattresses. The commercial organics generator threshold reduction from 1 ton to 1/2 ton per week really didn't end up impacting the city. Even Newton North, which was the only facility that might have generated that much food waste, does not meet that threshold. For textiles, we have a free curbside collection by appointment available through the vendor that we work with, HelpSee. There are 9 collection bins that collect textiles at the Resource Recovery Center with various vendors. There's a HelpSee bin program at 12 schools that have been really overwhelmingly used, much more than we expected. And that's, I hope, a convenience option for residents. With HelpSee, we get weight data. And so for the first time, we have information that we've collected 75 tons of textiles in 2022. I thought that was pretty astounding. For our mattress recycling program, we have recycled 820 mattresses and box springs since November 1st. Again, I just posted the information I've already stated, that there's drop-off available for $35 per item or curbside collection for $60 per item. 75% of a mattress is recyclable, which is where the disposal ban came from via Mass DEP. We have seen a slight uptick in illegal dumping of mattresses, but I would say that that was anticipated. And if anything, it's been less than I thought it would be. And I would say that when we hear resident dissatisfaction with the pricing of that service, we ask them to reach out to their state elected officials and ask them to pass an EPR law in order for there to be a fully funded program to handle mattress recycling. So from Mass DEP, we receive grant funding. There is a program called the Recycling Dividends Program. In 2022, we received an award of $68,000. What's unique about this grant is that it is applicable to a wide range of eligible expenditures, and there's no time limit on when you have to spend this money by. It's not like a reimbursement. We get the money up front. We get a list of what we can spend the money on toward different projects, education and outreach, project-based temporary staffing, enforcement staffing, all sorts of different things to divert more waste or reduce waste. And we simply report back to DEP once per year on what the money was spent on. This grant criteria is changing this year, which may reduce our award because DEP is incentivizing further waste reduction by shrinking cart size or moving to trash as a utility model. which currently Newton does not adopt. So historically, I wanted to cover the curbside service waste reduction efforts in reference to a couple of other projects that I'll reference in a minute. So in 2008, 2009, there was the pilot program for the automated cart system that we ended up implementing citywide starting in October of 2009. This introduced a trash limit of 64 gallons with the overflow bags available for purchase, which was the first time that there was a trash limit put into place. That system has just been in existence since, although you may recall that when we had our last hauling contract, even though we have the same service, the costs for that service continue to go up. In February of 2020, we put in place a collection fee for bulky waste and white goods, again, those large recyclable items. And we did see a significant drop in that waste stream. We do have an ongoing curbside education project to try and combat recycling contamination. We have one staff person, our waste diversion coordinator, that leads a team of volunteers for 3 hours a day during summer and fall in the mornings. This project has run the past 2 years, and we have so far applied 11,000 cart top decals that are intended to educate folks on what belongs in the cart, what types of materials should go in there. During the times that this group is going out to the curb and applying decals, we are doing cart inspections, not for the purpose of enforcement, although if something is found that's, egregiously incorrect, we do let the resident know that. But we have just been tracking data on what we've been finding. So we have found that 29% of households had some form of recycling contamination. 19% of that 29% had high contamination, 66% had low contamination, and 53% of the contamination was plastic bags and film. It continues to be the #1 issue in our recycling stream. We also have been paying attention to cart volume. So set out rates when, how full the cart is when it is set out at the curb. We found that 49% of residents set out carts that are less than 60% full. And for recycling, 32% of residents set out carts that are less than 60% full. There has been an ongoing project for a couple of years now. In November of 2020, Newton was awarded a DEP technical assistance grant, which is a non-monetary grant that allows 80 hours of staff time of a DEP official to assist us in developing recommendations for our curbside trash and recycling services. The goals are to reduce trash, maximize environmental protection, and reduce costs or minimize our cost increases. We applied for this because we are expecting significant service cost increases. Our next hauling contract expires in June of 2025. And again, that long-term trash disposal contract expires in June of 2028. So this project is to set recommendations to time any type of potential changes to our curbside services with those contracts at mind, the time frame for those contracts at mind. The recommendations report is expected soon to inform next steps for curbside services. As far as long-term planning, Mayor Fuller has committed $100,000 for development of a long-term sustainable materials management plan. This is going to be a holistic view of waste and recyclable materials generated across all sectors within Newton, not just the residential sector, which is what the city primarily focuses on and tends to have the most control over. There is an RFP currently in revision. I would expect it to be released by June, possibly earlier. And some of the things that are included in that RFP right now are to determine, so for a consultant to be hired to determine the amount and type of waste generated by different sectors within the city. So different sectors, including schools, city buildings, commercial, institutional, industrial, just trying to get a better gauge on what is actually being generated within the city. Recommendations to increase waste diversion and reduce waste generation. Explore further expansion of organics diversion and factor greenhouse gas emissions into those recommendations. And thinking bigger picture, I just want to point out that Newton is truly a statewide leader on advancing product stewardship laws. So I referenced this before with mattresses. The basic concept of a product stewardship law is to require a manufacturer of a certain type of product or material to be responsible for that good that they put out into the world through the full life cycle of the product. So this model has been in existence for, well, since 1990. I can't do the math that quick. And it's how Europe has such high recycling and recovery rates of all sorts of different materials. This policy mechanism is being adopted widely in developed nations and even emerging markets. It's seen as a way to take the burden off of taxpayers and onto the generators of this material, or even just the consumers of a specific type, specific material, instead of across a municipality or a different government entity. I want to acknowledge that Mayor Fuller was recognized as the 2022 Public Servant of the Year by the statewide nonprofit Mass Recycle for her testifying in support of EPR bills and the expansion of the bottle bill. She was the only locally elected official to testify and come out in strong support for those bills, and it really spoke volumes to our state legislators. I chair the Product Stewardship Council for the state, and I have done several presentations already this legislative session advocating for these bills. And, you know, I'm able to use a lot of data from Newton to point to how these laws would help municipalities. And model resolution language for the state has included wording from Newton's resolution that was passed by Newton City Council in 2021. And our goal with the Product Stewardship Council is to get an EPR law for paint passed this session. We do spend a fair amount of money on managing paint. It's 60% of what comes into our household hazardous waste events. And it's a bill that has very little opposition. With that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Trabert, for that wonderful presentation. Very well done, very comprehensive. I want to let you know that people in Nonantum are thrilled with the street sweeping, and it's going really well. The cars are being moved and the streets are getting swept. So I've been hearing from a lot of residents how well that's going.
Fantastic.
So if you want to just take down your, stop your screen sharing so I can see everybody. Thank you so much. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions. So I see Councillor Norton's hand up, followed by Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we are so blessed to have Ms. Trabert here working for Newton and doing us all proud. I was on a meeting earlier this morning of the Environmental Policy Committee of the Mass Municipal Association, where Ms. Trabert presented and did a fantastic job. I have a super short question, I think. So it sounds like as the waste hauling bills grow higher, perhaps we will be able to financially justify covering the cost of organics pickup for our residents. Do you see that, the direction that we're going? I mean, that was pretty surprising with all the options to get rid of organics, that it's still such a high proportion of our trash, yet maybe it's not that surprising because we make people pay right now. And if the city pays, it's free.
Yes, so I would say I've done analysis to try and figure that out. And there's a huge disconnect because even though we are removing about a potential, if we're getting all of it, it would be 33% of our waste stream that we are removing. The bigger part of the cost than our disposal is the hauling. And so if we're adding a third truck that's coming to every single person's house every week, we would increase our costs instead of decrease our costs. The only way to make it work is to really change our model. And I'm going to say something crazy, but it's what other municipalities in other places within this country and our neighbor of Canada have done to solve that equation. So the way you do it is you still get 2 trucks that come to your house, but you have trash pickup that is every other week. You have recycling collection that is every other week. And then you have organics collection that is every week. That is the way to make it so that you are actually reducing your costs and diverting as much material as possible. I'm not suggesting that we do that here. I'm just saying that's how to make that economically feasible.
I appreciate that. Now I'm going to say something crazy, which is I think everything should be on the table that makes sense for the environment and makes sense financially. But, and this is a wider theme, if we're going to make a big change, we need to bring in our residents early and have discussions and input and feedback over a long period of time. Because I think where we really run into trouble is when we try to make big change and people don't like it because they don't understand it or they didn't have time to understand why we're doing it. So, so if you really think that that's the direction we should be going, and then we should have a conversation about what a time frame would look like and how we would roll that out and really offer people a chance to understand why and provide feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norton. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I'm first going to say, maybe this won't sound outrageous, that some people think public facilities is a really boring committee and that we do very unglamorous stuff. For me, one of the highlights of being on this committee is to hear Juanita Trabert's updates. I get so excited. I look forward to it. I'm never disappointed. And I'm not just sucking up to you, Juanita. I just want to say thank you so much for how you do this. Yeah. And that you do it, and that you do it in such a thorough way that it, like, I get actually tingly hearing this. One comment I'll make, I'm really surprised at how few households sign up for the Black Earth program. I must live in a very unusual neighborhood. My household is a subscriber. We actually have 2 bins, the little one and the bigger one. And I see in our neighborhood a lot of people. I do live in a special neighborhood, but I guess that's because it costs people money to participate. I can only think that's the only reason we don't have a wider subscription rate to that. Though I'm interested in your crazy idea about every other week trash, every other week recycling, and every week organics. Like I'm not sure I would dismiss that idea. I'm happy to see the tonnage go down. I wish more people would sign up for Black Earth. And thank you so much again for your update for us tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Laredo.
So I don't think I have quite the level of excitement that my colleague from Ward 3 does. And I'm not sure how many dinner parties she's going to get invited to if that's the topic of discussion. But I just have to jump on board here, Ms. Trabert. A superb presentation, not only because you have mastered your subject, and we've seen this multiple times, but you have a very clear financial understanding of the financial implications of everything we do. And that is extremely important and frankly, sometimes rare among all sorts of groups. So you're to be applauded for that. Really, we are very lucky to have the good work that you do. I do want to follow up on 2 things. One, I think Councillor Norton is absolutely right about the idea of how you implement changes. And it's not just getting people used to doing something, although I think that's important, but it's also, frankly, to make sure that we try out things. And if we make a mistake, we can change or backtrack. I think sometimes we in our enthusiasm go full bore on something, and then we have a lot of anger and misunderstanding, and it just doesn't work as well. So if you want to make changes, I think obviously you need to bring us along to be your allies. And two, think about how it can be done on a pilot or experimental program. And so we don't just hear from the folks who are active and involved and understand all the environmental benefits, but we get to really try this out on the residents who may not be coming to city council meetings to voice their opinion, but will have lots of opinions if we do something that they don't like and inconveniences their daily lives. One final question, the HELPC program, the clothing bin program, how often are they picking up those, from those bins?
Are you referring to the ones at the schools?
Yeah.
I believe the collection is once per week for most of them. Oh, I apologize. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay. I believe it's once a week. I will say that I don't actually oversee the bin program for the schools. That is handled by Stephanie Gilman within Newton Public Schools. I do work in concert with her, but I believe it's once a week.
I had understood it was much less than that, but I would just request that you speak to her. The bins, unlike a lot of our other bins, these ones are quite large. Now, understandably, because you're putting clothing in there, you need a bigger bin, but they've been placed, you know, at least on the edges of playgrounds and so forth. And I think we could accomplish the goal with some maybe either smaller bins that are less obtrusive. But I just suggest that you talk to her and find out. Because my understanding was it wasn't once a week, it was much less frequently, and I could be wrong on that. So if you could just check into that, I think it'd be helpful. We certainly want to encourage people to use the bins. At the same time, you know, if something's sitting out there for a long time and is a third full or a half full, we probably can get by with a smaller container. Otherwise, just keep up what you're doing, and thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Laredo. Councilor Kalis.
Thank you. That was a fantastic presentation, Ms. Traber. Thank you so much. And Councilor Kelly, I'd have dinner and discuss this with you anytime. So, Ms. Traber, two quick questions. One, there was a page that you got to, and the large swing in costs really jumped out at me. How do you budget for that? And is the first question. And the second question is it the fact that virgin plastics, and I only know this about plastics, are less expensive than recycled, that is somehow driving the costs and people are not recycling, or what is it there?
Okay, so to address your first question about budgeting, so we budget conservatively. So we anticipate that the cost of our recyclables each month for processing will be, I would say we estimate. It's basically, you know, in the formula, there's kind of a max price that we would pay. So we don't estimate that it's going to be the max. We assume that the recycling will have some value. And so it would bring our price down a little bit. Last year, when we made money on our recycling, for the entire year, we made $77,000. Whereas the previous year, we had paid $560,000. So it was essentially kind of a windfall for our budget. We certainly had dollars that were allocated to be spent on processing. I know that those were elsewhere put to work within DPW. And it was pretty rare. It was not expected.
So you assume that you're going to have to pay, and if there's a windfall, there is, and you're tracking it by month.
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's good. That makes sense.
Yes. For your other question, I believe it's mostly about kind of like the supply and demand and how kind of the volatility works within the recycling markets. So with plastics in particular, the cost of oil really drives what the price of virgin plastic is. And so as the cost of oil goes up, that virgin plastic material cost goes up, making recyclable material much more attractive. There are certainly other things that could help kind of boost the demand for recycled materials, such as recycled content mandates or things like that, that has been passed in California and I believe looked at extensively in Vermont. Not something yet on the radar in Massachusetts. That's, I don't know, at the surface, what I could say. If you have like a follow-up question about that, I'm happy to take a
That's
stab.
okay. We can handle it later. The other question I had, I want to thank you for that program where you have people that volunteers that go out and look at our trash and our recyclables. I got a little note and I was appreciative of that, about our recycling. Are you keeping that data? Because it seems like that could help drive decisions on whether we go bi-weekly on anything or not.
We are keeping that data. The first year we went out, we used an app that is actually designed to be doing like a curbside audit to kind of keep track of everything electronically. We found it to be a little bit cumbersome as far as time, and we really wanted to get to as many carts as possible to get the educational decal on. So last year we didn't use the app. This year, I think we will go back to using the app and going back to gathering more of that data.
I think that'll be really important if there is any type of change that we have in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Kalis. Councilor Crossley.
Thank you. Well, I can't be silent. I have to echo the praise. Outstanding as usual. Thank you very much. Really just one short question. Well, actually, first, I hope I'm going to get an invitation to that dinner because I'd be happy to share. Maybe we can also talk about sewers. Ms. Trabert, as you know, I don't know, a year ago or something, I bought a compost thing for my yard from you. And I wonder if you have a sense, because obviously we don't need the Black Earth program if we're making our own compost. Do you have any numbers on how many residents are using on-site composters? It's very effective, actually.
So we only have numbers about the bins that are sold by the city. And so I do have that data. I don't know it off the top of my head, but we do purchase those bins using those grant dollars. And so I keep track every year and report it to Mass DEP how many compost bins were purchased. And we sell them subsidized. So we sell them.
A great deal.
Yeah. And so we don't have good data on how many people are backyard composting. I will say that something that's been preventing me from kind of guiding and gearing our education campaign toward more backyard composting is the concern about rats. And so that has been something that I've heard kind of on the opposite end of like, oh, my neighbor backyard composts and I see foot traffic there and I hope that they stop, or is there anything that we can do to make them stop? And so I've just been cautious in promoting that further, unless I can come up with like kind of a really good solution for that. I know in Cambridge, that was part of their motivation to move to a citywide program offering curbside collection. And they discourage backyard composting for that reason. They don't ban it or anything like that, but they don't encourage it at this point in time. So I know that varies in different parts of the city, but I mean, I backyard compost. I don't live in Newton, but I agree that it's it's very effective, but there's just kind of walking that balance for residents that are impacted by that.
Compost though, doesn't it? I mean, rats aren't attracted by I don't know. We've never attracted rats, and the machine has a very solid bottom, so they can't dig in. Anyway, we've composted for years in another location and never have had rodents of any sort. Lots of worms, but you know. Anyway, thanks very much again.
Thank you, Councilor Crossley. I just have a couple, I'm going to keep my comments or questions very brief, Juanita, because we do have a couple other items and I can always call you and ask you later. But one thing was, as you know, we recently passed the private hauler ordinance, which is going to require all private haulers that do business in the city to pick up recycling as well as trash. And I understand that we are eligible for additional grant funding from the state for that. Do you have any idea what that grant might be? Or
so it qualifies us for an additional point for that RDP program. So I don't know the exact point count for this year. In fact, it usually isn't released until mid-April, kind of what the criteria are. So there's a very short window between mid-April and mid-June when the grant application actually happens that we can qualify for that. And otherwise you're just aiming for it for the following year. So it's either 1 or 2 points, which would be, I believe, $4,000 or $8,000 added to our recycling dividends program grant.
I'll take that. I'm very interested in finding ways that we can be more efficient and cost effective, because we know that the looming ahead of us are significant cost increases. And to this point, we've been relatively insulated from significant costs that most other communities have had already. And I know that you've been working on a solid waste plan that I think you're going to release in June. And now there's this new sustainable materials plan. The mayor's funding, and we're going to have hire a consultant. Is that correct? Because are those two different plans then? Or
yes. So the recommendations report is the technical assistance grant from DEP that we've been working on for a couple of years, and that is designed to be much more short-term, kind of what our next steps are for particularly our curbside services contract. Is it feasible to make a big change? What does the timeline look like for that? What steps could we make to increase our diversion of organics? Kind of what methods and costs are associated with that. So that's very short term and very narrow scope. The consultant project is much more for long-term planning, looking 5, 10, even 20 years out, and looking at more sectors than just residential for the city. So that's kind of the differentiation between those two things, but they are happening. So the recommendations report, I expect to be out, yes, within, I don't have an exact time frame. I would say it's, kind of being revised with the mayor, next couple of months, certainly. The RFP for the long-term plan is expected to go out also within the next couple of months, but then that report wouldn't be developed for at least another year. So kind of the short-term plan for our next steps for our hauling contract in the very near future, and then this longer range plan would be expected in the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay, thank you. I'm very interested in how, in terms of a cost analysis and what kind of benefits the city would get from increasing pay-as-you-throw type programs, including reduced cart size, every other week pickup for trash, or mandatory organics diversion, things like that. Because we're all concerned about the looming costs, especially with our 2028, our contract at Millbury, Wheelabrator, and ending in 2028, and that's a 20-year contract. So you don't have any idea, do you, about what kind of costs we'd be facing? And which seems like 2028, still a few years away, but it's looming really when you think about all the public education outreach, I imagine pilot programs that we would have, just like we did when we went to the automated carts, we did pilots. And I think we'd be doing those for any kind of other kind of change in our trash and recycling program.
Yes. So when I've spoken with a couple of municipalities that have signed new disposal contracts, again, only for a 5-year term, they saw increases of 40% in their per ton charge. So that looks like Cambridge paying, $75, and now it went up to $95. So, and I think even higher than that for some other communities. I'm paying attention to those things, but it's an evolving landscape. So I'm fearful, or kind of like conservatively concerned about the costs a handful of years from now being that much higher, because this is a problem in this state, and it's not going to go away or get better without just reducing the amount of trash generation.
Right. And it's not just disposal costs, it's also the transportation costs. If we're putting them on trains going to other states, which could decide not to take out-of-state trash, just like China decided not to take our recycling back in 2018.
Yes.
Finally, just my last request is securing municipal and school dumpsters, just mostly with regards to rodent issues that we've been having. And I do see that they're almost all open, and I'm concerned that they're one of the reasons that are causing some of our having problems with rodents. It's a big complaint that I get from my constituents.
So I, at the beginning of this past school year, well, this current school year, did send out a reminder email to the facilities director for public schools, and just kind of put out a reminder and even a request for if there were any lock bars on the dumpsters that were damaged or in need of repair, to contact me on those. And just a reminder that dumpsters should be remaining locked. Our biggest concern, I certainly hear you on the rat traffic, but our biggest concern from the collection standpoint is illegal dumping into those dumpsters, because we've certainly run into issues where the dumpster is left open overnight and someone comes in and dumps a large piece of furniture. It's kind of a dangerous job to get that out in order for it to get serviced, and Waste Management will simply decline service until it is removed. So we want to just be preventing that problem from happening in the first place. I can certainly send out another reminder email to the Director of Facilities for Newton Public Schools, and again, request that kind of on the ground feedback. I haven't been informed of any lock bars that are damaged this year. And I can also tell you that during the pandemic, we went through an extensive exercise going around. Someone from Waste Management went around to every single school dumpster and evaluated whether or not it had a functioning lock bar. And we paid to get lock bars installed on every dumpster. So we know recently, I believe that was in the summer of 2020, that was a good outdoor project for that time of, for that season of the pandemic, that there was emphasis put on that because of the illegal dumping problem at the time.
Thank you. Just, I do, as you know, I do like to look around at dumpsters, and I don't find the lock bars being used, unfortunately. So another reminder would be great. So, well, thank you very much. I don't see any other questions from the committee, so we will move on to our next item. Thank you, Ms. Trabert.
Thank you.
Okay, let me find my.
Need a motion to hold.
Oh, sorry. Yes, of course.
Motion
Can I get a motion to hold, please?
Motion to hold.
Thank you, Councilor Crossley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? Thank you very much. Okay, next is 12223. This is Her Honor the Mayor requesting the Public Buildings Department to update the Public Facilities Committee on the Countryside School project. And we are joined by Josh Morse, our Commissioner of Public Buildings.
Good evening. Thank you very much, councilors. So tonight we're going to be giving you a brief presentation on the Countryside School. Several of you are actually tied to the project directly, so you've been on the journey with us. Others have been at many of our meetings. And for those that weren't, you probably saw the email that I sent out to the committee that gave an entire but brief snapshot of the history of the project with all the useful links, and gave you all of the information you could possibly want about the project. But that being said, I'm just going to do introductions and we'll move quickly through this item because I know it's getting late. So we have with us tonight Donna Danisco from Danisco Design, Vivian Lowe, also from Danisco Design, and we have Janet Bernardo from Horsley Witten. So with that, I will turn it over to Donna and Vivian.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Is it okay for me just to share my screen? Is that all right? Give this a shot. Make sure everyone can see that. Maybe a thumbs up would be great. Thank you, Josh. So we are really excited actually to be here this evening, and Josh already gave the introductions. I do also would like to mention that Steve Brown from Dora and Whittier, our owner project manager, is also on the call with us this evening. And under the Countryside School team, I did neglect to put down the Mass School Building Authority, and some of this will make sense as we go through our presentation. But receiving funding from the MSBA, they are our partner in this Countryside School project, and so we do follow their rules as we go through the project. This is the very almost beginning of the project, just really quick. We will be submitting the preferred schematic report, or the PSR, to the MSBA at the end of the month. There's some items that have been decided or determined, and there's still quite a bit of work. We don't have all the answers tonight that we'll go through over the next year, actually, as we work on the design of the project. So what we do know where we are is part of the MSBA process is for the Countryside School, we needed to look at 2 design enrollments, one for 340 students and one for 465 students. We submitted the preliminary design program in December with the preferred design enrollment for 465. We also submitted an educational program and space summary that has been voted on by the school committee that identified all the programs required to have this inclusive educational program for the Countryside students. What you'll see in the 3rd column, the Countryside space requirements, is we're looking for approximately 50,000 square feet of program space with an overall gross square foot of the building of 75,500 square feet. And when you compare that to MSBA guidelines, you'll see we're right in line with what their guidelines are, recognizing you do have some unique programs. And we received their comments back, and they have they're in full support of all of the programs and spaces for the project. So what does this mean in terms of looking forward for the project? Looking at the student distribution, we're currently at about 372 students, and you can see that in the graph on the left. And then we start looking at where the enrollment's going to increase to 465. So where are those students coming from? Well, we can see that those are coming from mostly from the Northland and Northland 40B projects. We looked at multiple sites. Hats off to Josh and his team. They have a list of, I think, over 100 sites, but then we whittled it down to the sites that are available within the Countryside district. And we looked at 8 different sites, and looking at some of the land use restrictions, legal restrictions, size of the sites, it really just turned out that although we recognize there are some flood issues and wetlands on the Countryside site, it really became obvious that this still is the preferred site for the new school. So I'm going to turn this over to Janet Bernardo with Horsley Witten to take us through our understanding of the site and how we're going to manage it.
Hi, good evening. Horsley Witten is providing the stormwater management design and calculating the compensatory flood storage for the Countryside School project. As you are aware, the Countryside School is located within a floodplain that's associated with South Meadow Brook. So the image on this left is generated from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA's website. The site property is located with the red is the property lines. South Meadow Brook is at the bottom on the southern property. And the blue is basically showing the land area that has 1% chance of flooding, also known as the 100-year floodplain. And the orange is the shading is the land area that has 0.2% chance of flooding to annually, also known as the 500-year floodplain. The flood profile on the right of the screen is also generated by FEMA, and we were able to locate the Countryside School on the South Meadowbrook profile, and we interpolated the various flood elevations for the property. And so the flood profile indicates that the 10-year floodplain for the Countryside School is at 109.6, the 100-year is at 112.4, and the 500-year is at 113.3. On the next slide, the existing conditions topographic survey also illustrates the 10-year flood elevation as the yellow contour line. The 100 is the green, and the 500 is the blue. And the Countryside School is currently located within the 200-foot riverside area associated with South Meadow Brook. So it's very wet. We are very aware that it is very wet. The existing conditions site section slide, which is a great slide, illustrates the existing school. And again, the lines on the bottom show the yellow is the 10-year floodplain, which is a little harder to see because it's yellow. But then the green is the 100-year flood elevation. The blue is the 500-year elevation. And you can see that the existing school with the finished floor elevation of 110.5 is just about 10 inches above the 10-year floodplain and 2 feet below the 100-year floodplain. And then the basement level is another like 14 feet below the 100 floodplain. So if water gets into the school through, the loading area, the bulkhead or anything, or lower windows, it could fill up that basement area if the flood waters from the South Meadow Brook came up that high. So then the next slide is for the proposed 6A approach, which illustrates the various floodplains and the proposed school, one of the proposed school's options, with the same yellow, green, and blue floodplain elevations, and the new school cross-section, which is basically showing that the new school would be located above the finished floor elevation, above the 100-year floodplain. It's required by the current state building code to be designed at higher than the 100-year elevation plus 1 foot. So that's the current regulations. And so the proposed school, what we're kind of showing right now is set at a minimum elevation of 114, which is at least 19 inches above the FEMA 100-year floodplain. So as part of the permitting process with the Newton Conservation Commission, we're required to prove that we can provide equal or greater flood storage for the whole property under proposed conditions compared to existing conditions. So we kind of are required to evaluate the storage on a foot-by-foot basis. This is part of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and how they require performance standards for bordering land subject to flooding. So when we submit our notice of intent to the Conservation Commission, we'll have a comparison table to demonstrate that the proposed project will not increase the water surface elevation for the 100-year floodplain. So we're feeling fairly confident at this stage that we will be able to provide that compensatory flood storage for the new school building.
Thank you, Janet. And we were showing approach 6A, but we also wanted to let you know that MSBA, our partner, is also asking us to look at what it would cost for a repair code upgrade, which actually is not really even viable in this situation, as Janet said, or we would only be allowed to spend up to $10 million, which would not bring the whole building up to standards that would make it a useful investment or asset for many years to come. We did look at a renovation and addition as well, another requirement of the MSBA. And by doing that, what we have is actually, we would need to raise the first floor by 4 feet in order to comply with the building codes and stay outside of the 100-foot buffer or floodplain. So that really is not a viable solution. So we started looking at many different locations and configurations of the building of a new school, keeping in mind that our goal and the preference of Countryside folks is to stay in their existing school while the new school is being built. So we looked at many different locations of the different buildings where it could be sited on the site, recognizing that the existing school would remain. And it's also in the lowest and wettest part of the site. So looking at it in the corner here takes advantage of the highest part of the site, which really will help us with the staying above the 114 elevation. We looked at creating a bar type building, a long bar type building, which would allow most of the site to be open and expansive and stay away from the existing building. But that pushes us into the conservation land, and we know that is certainly not a favorable solution. We took the bar type building or the L-shaped building and flipped it, and also wanted to push it into the site, which would also open up the site for continuous use, whether it's passive or regular recreation or access to the building. That too had us in the wetland buffer. And then another option was, how can we really open up the site and putting in a bar configuration, and that too put us into the wetland buffer. So when we started looking at these options, and there are many more, trust us, we really started evaluating and creating criteria to weigh each of the options against each other. We looked at the cost and the schedule impacts of each of the options. We looked at the educational benefits for each of the options, safety and security. We looked at the community impacts or positive attributes of each of these, as well as the building, the site impacts, the sustainability. And when we measured each of these options comparatively to each other, this 6A, this corner L shape at the northeast corner, really just rose above to show us that this really is the preferred location, especially recognizing that we really want to manage the stormwater and the floodplain on the site. So this is a preliminary look of what the site is going to be. What I do want to say is we have not completed the evaluation of where the buses and cars will go. We know that situating the building on the corner will allow us to have separation of buses and cars, but we're working with the TAG, Safe Routes to School, Newton traffic folks. I'm sure I'm missing 3 or 4 others. Oh, Regina, the Newton Public Schools. She is the bus coordinator or director. So we have a lot of conversations going on. We have our traffic consultants involved as well. So we haven't decided what the best solution is for having buses and cars on which portion of Dedham Street. So we're still vetting that out. We also recognize that we will require some on-street parking, and we also recognize there's some beautiful trees that we're trying to preserve. So all of these items will need to have further conversation before we make any final decisions. We've located the parking to one area of the site, and we're also continuing to study that. What we heard originally was the Newton South girls softball uses this field for practice, and so we wanted to include that as part of the conversation, as part of the site amenities. But if that is not a necessity, we're talking about perhaps moving the parking further along Dedham Street. So we are really at the early stage. We just wanted to bring this to you because we will be submitting this as the preferred solution, which really is just 465 students, new school in this location. We are not saying that we've worked out all of the site details at this point. And I lost my mouse. And more importantly, it's a school, right? So we've spent a lot of time with Beth Harley, who's the principal at Countryside, and her staff and Newton Public Schools. And what was important to the Countryside community was that we maintained the core spaces such as the cafeteria and gym to be on the first floor, of course, but that kindergarten was also important to be on the first floor. So we wanted to arrange the building so that the building could be closed off, the academic wing could be closed off while the community wing could be used during off hours. It was also important to create flexible spaces. All the blue are the classrooms, the purple are the special education spaces. So it was important to make sure that we had flexibility within the classrooms and that the special education is integrated into their grade level classrooms. And you can see that this really small, compact footprint accommodates all of their needs, but it actually makes this really feel very intimate, and it maximizes time on learning. Again, we just started looking at what the building could look like. We have not started to design it. That really becomes or starts once we move into schematic design. But we wanted to give people a sense of the massing on the site. And we are talking about reconfiguring the intersection of Dedham Street. We call that Dedham Street North, Dedham Street East, and then Walnut Street. Trying to make it smaller so that pedestrians have a smaller crossing from one side to the other, and that it also creates a calming approach for cars to be passing. So with the traffic consultants and all of the engineers through the city of Newton, everyone feels that this is a really great solution. It's not finalized yet, but just so you can see that the intersection looks a little different. And then here's another view looking back from the playground area, looking at the school. The gym would be this two-story mass over to our right, with the academic wing looking, have north-south orientation, which will be great for daylighting and views. And by putting the building, it's really quite compact, putting it on the corner, you can see how much it just really opens up the site. And we're really excited about the opportunities, both from a passive and active recreation and embracing outdoor learning with everything that the site has to offer. So where we are right now, we're at the preferred schematic report, or PSR. We'll be bringing it to the SBC and the DRC for their vote for us to submit this preferred option to the MSBA on the 25th. And the MSBA will be voting to approve us to move into schematic design at the end of June. We're going to just jump right into schematic design, though, as soon as we submit it to MSBA, so we can get a jump start and really identifying all the remaining elements. And there's going to be quite a few that we anticipate submitting the schematic design to MSBA in October with their approval in December. And our goal is to be seeking a 558 approval towards the end of the year. So upcoming meetings, of course, here we are this evening. As I mentioned, the SBC DRC meeting is on the 25th. We will have an internal conversation with MSBA. It's called Facility Assessment Subcommittee meeting before they approve the preferred solution to advance us into schematic design. And that is it.
Thank you, Donna. The other thing I was just going to point out to the committee is that we did just recently have a meeting of the Design Review Committee and the School Building Committee where they both had unanimous straw votes to support this preferred option. As Donna said, it can't be said enough. This is the preferred option. It's not the site plan. We've got a lot of work left to do to nail down our site plan. We'll be working with the community, the City Council, Design Review Committee, the Building Committee, and many others as we move forward on this. And we did have our preliminary meeting with the Conservation Commission as well, which went very well. So that is that. We can open it up to questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Appreciate the presentation. If we can stop screen sharing.
Sharing, you got it. Thank you.
Okay, and I can see everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Danisco. That was a great presentation. Very informative. Thank you. Councilor Laredo.
I'll be really brief. I think this looks like a very good start. Strikes me with what I think is a somewhat difficult site because of the stream and the wetlands, that you're using it well. I like the idea of making the school more compact feeling. I think changing the streetscape, the street configuration makes a lot of sense, especially next to an elementary school where you want to encourage people to drive safely. I assume going forward, you're going to have many more conversations with our city engineers on that. I'm sure this is very early. I wouldn't suggest the best way to do it. I would want to just be concerned about any overflow effects that you have on other streets when you make changes like this, and hope that some thought will be given to that as well. I'm sure Commissioner Morse has been through that multiple times, but looks like a very good start. Look forward to having you come back here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Laredo. Councilor Kalis?
No question, just a comment to my fellow councilors. I mean, I've been on the team here, and I haven't been on one of these before. I'm walking, I'm feeling very confident about this, and I feel like we all know heroes don't always wear capes, and that hero is Josh Morse in this one. And Danisco has really done a great job because they've taken a lot of different feedback from the community, and especially on that Walnut Dedham intersection, on the different routes to school that people take, on the flood zone concerns, on blue zones. I mean, those are still issues to work out, but there's been a lot of back and forth, and I feel like they've really listened, and that's really important. So I think where we're at is in a really good place right now.
Thank you very much, Councilor Kalis. I agree, it's a difficult site, and I look forward to getting more information about it, but it looks good so far. So I'm not seeing any other hands up. So Councilor Kalis, would you like to make a motion to hold?
Motion to hold, please.
Okay, so there's a motion to hold. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, thank you very much. So we're on
Thank
to
you.
our final item of the evening. It's 12623, and this is to appropriate 1.15 million for Franklin Elementary School. Mr. Morse.
Thank you very much. So I'm just sharing my screen here. Can people see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is material you had in your back in the backup for the item. So tonight I'm requesting $1.15 million to fully fund the feasibility phase for the Franklin School project. Very exciting. And so for folks that have seen me present these before, I oftentimes will start by saying the answer to almost any question you're going to ask me is that's the point of the feasibility study. But nonetheless, ask away. I will do my best. But I did something a little different this time. I included, which I won't share, screen share because it's a longer document, but in the backup, I included a pretty detailed breakdown of the types of services that we get for this money. Councillor Crosley raised this a few years back, and I drafted this up. I think it's helpful for people to understand what the feasibility phase really entails, because it's a tremendous amount of work on any project. But this is, as you see on the screen, this is the breakdown of the 1.15 million. And obviously this is less the 100,000 that was previously approved of ARPA funding that got us through the pre-feasibility planning phase that stopped last fall. And just so that everybody knows, when the project began, I sent out certified letters to the abutters and the abutters to the abutters. And of course, used our listservs and the principals listservs to really get the word out. I just did that again earlier this week, I think on Monday, because I thought post override probably got some more people's attention. And I spent a lot of time today responding back to people who received that letter and have now signed up for our listserv and who are actively engaging on the project. So we certainly have the neighborhood's attention, which is great. And we're looking forward to getting started again. That being said, I'm happy to answer any and all questions about the funding request and the feasibility phase.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Councillor Laredo, I see your hand up.
Thank you. You know, Commissioner Morse, you've come in on time and on budget on everything you've done. So I have no doubt that you're going to do the same here. With not only on time and on budget, but with really good projects. My only question is this money coming from the override money, or is this bonded money, or where's this pool of money coming from?
So I certainly don't want to speak out of turn for our CFO, but this is money that was override money. So I would assume that this would be bonded, but I can certainly get that information before it goes to finance to confirm.
That's my only question. I mean, since we approved an override for this project, I would assume this would come from that. But some confirmation before you go to finance would be helpful. And if it's not from override money, an explanation of why that would be the case.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Laredo. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I'm not sure if Jonathan Yo is actually here and wants to address that now or not. But I'll just talk for a minute. It's a busy time of year for those of us on the design review committee with all these school projects. And I'm also for my colleagues to know, I am your representative on the design review committee, which I've been on now for almost 30 consecutive years. That was really aging me. I'm also on the Franklin School Building Committee. And when the time is right, if there are no other questions, I would very much like to move approval of this item for the funding.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly. So I am not seeing any other hands. So there is a motion to approve by Councillor Kelly. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions or any nays? Okay, so that passes. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your presentation and also to your team.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
He does wear a cape, I think. Only when rescuing people from a fire.
Okay. There wasn't time for a cape on that one.
We wrapped it up before 10 o'clock. Not too bad considering our all the discussion items we had. So thank you, everybody, and we are adjourned.
Good job, Madam
See you next
Chairman.
week.
Everyone.
Have a
Hello,
good
Amy.